There's a lot we can do at the client level, just looking at what the plan is and where is income going to fluctuate. And frankly, the more we move to extremes, the easier this gets. You know, if you're having a high income year and you're at the top tax bracket, it's not hard to look at this and say, yeah, it's kind of hard to be higher than the top bracket. So clearly we want to defer here. And likewise, we'll see people that say, all right, well, I just retired and my earned income vanished away and I'm not actually taking much money out of my IRAs yet. You know what, like I'm in the bottom brackets. Great. Capital gains are 0. I'm not quite sure what future tax law will be, but I'm pretty sure it won't be negative. So let's get some 0% capital gains rates. So, often we find people move to one relative extreme or another, at least for a period of time, and it gives us pretty clear guidelines, either because they're at an extreme now or we're projecting them to be at one of the extremes in the future. Certainly the wild card that overlays all of that is, there's two things that go into my future tax situation. Number one is my situation. Number two is what Congress says the tax laws are. And I can at least get some good guesses about number one. Number two is a little bit harder. But even when we look at number two, we do have about 100 years of history now about how we handle the U.S. income tax system. And we do see some pretty common trends. While we tinker with the brackets, effective tax rates are actually relatively stable. Affluent folks tend to have an effective tax rate in the low to mid 20s. By the time you add up all the rates and the deductions and the rest, we get to a pretty stable tax environment, which still means when people are way up in the 30s and beyond, it tends to be a good time to defer. And when people are down in the teens, it tends to be a good time to accelerate. And one of the crucial things to recognize in the tax environment as well is that even if we change the tax laws, and the biggest theme we see from this with clients is, well, we have government deficits, so tax rates inevitably will have to be higher in the future. It's crucial to recognize that even in that regard, there are actually a lot of ways to generate more federal tax revenue that don't involve raising tax rates. The simplest is simply to engage in classic tax reform, where we eliminate lots of complex deductions, and you can actually bring the rates down. You may not pay less in total, but your marginal rates could be lower. And we're also one of the only developed countries left in the world that does not have some kind of national consumption tax. So a national sales tax or national value-added tax, which we may add at some point in the coming decade or two as well. Another way to raise federal tax revenue, but it doesn't necessarily hit your income. And so we often caution people that, yes, there is a true unknowability factor around future tax laws, but at a minimum, you have to recognize it's really unknowable. Future rates could be higher or lower, and even deficits are not actually a great indicator of the likelihood of higher or lower marginal rates. And on top of that, we still find that once that's a little bit up in the air, the driving factor is, what is your individual plan situation? When is your income clearly higher because you're working? When is it lower because you're retired? When is it higher because you're getting pensions and Social Security and required minimum distributions? And that's the piece that we can really roadmap around.
That maps right back to life cycle hypothesis, right? As we earn, as we save, as we distribute, and we can match our tax planning and tax deferral to that to take best advantage of those lower brackets.
Absolutely.